We are
This
working
video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric.
And so is Connor
Arkansas
O'Gara, who
owned.
never takes a day
Arkansas
off during football
operated.
season.
Go
Hey, you got a game
Pascal.com.
tonight, Clemson, Georgia Tech. So that means Connor's on the clock. What's up, Connor? How are you?
I'm doing well. You know, it was a great opening weekend. This was the real opening weekend. I mean, let's be honest here. I know week 0, everybody gets a little bit too excited, but it truly felt like we were back over the weekend, and I was reminded how difficult it is to keep track of all the craziness that unfolds with a college football Saturday, especially when you got non-conference play and there's a million things going on. But it is good to be back.
Yeah, it was a crazy weekend and capped off by last night. Wow. LSU, the only SEC team to take an L over the weekend, and special teams was the reason why. And did you think Brian Kelly should? I mean, you know, hindsight is always going to be 20/20 here. What did you think of the choice to go for the PAT instead of going for 2, and then the special teams breakdowns from LSU? My goodness.
Yeah, we always play the results with this. Had they gone for 2 and missed it, Brian Kelly gets dunked on, and it's considered the worst thing ever. And nobody points out that they had special teams miscues on extra points, and they couldn't block that area for whatever reason on the kicks before that. So nobody would have pointed that out. Everybody just wants to dunk on Brian Kelly. It was a bad game. It was like almost exactly what I expected to from the LSU side. It really was. Although I thought the difference in this game was going to be Kayshon Boutte late. And instead, Kayshon Boutte, he didn't have his first touch until there was 5.5 minutes left in the football game. I mean, that just can't happen. As much as we're going to talk about the special teams issues and whatnot, your best player not having the football for the first 55 minutes of a game is bad. It just is. That's some great analysis for you. I just thought that was a really frustrating development. And you see what he's done, in the aftermath of this, wherein he's deleted all of his LSU affiliations on social media. We know about the tumultuous offseason he had, and he got all this preseason All-America love. And I kept saying, I'm like, there are so many things that can blow up his season, and it took one game for all these questions to come back to the surface, and LSU just had a disastrous showing in what would have been just one of the more improbable victories ever, considering how bad it was for most of it. But we overreact. That's what we do, and everybody's overreacting to LSU because that's what they watched on Sunday night.
We're expecting Kayshon Boutte is in the transfer portal soon. I know Brett McMurphy has already reported.
No. That's a fake account. That's a fake account, Phil.
That's a fake account.
Oh,
okay.
You fell for it, Phil. Come on.
Yeah, well, if he's scrubbed everything from Instagram, dealing with LSU, I mean, that's kind of the next thing that you sort of expect. But maybe it's not going to happen, ASAP, but the writing seems to be on the wall there for him. Give me your impressions on Arkansas and Cincinnati. Well, it was a not great win for Arkansas. Cincinnati seemed to be the team that just made more mistakes, and Arkansas, I don't know, they really made a lot of mistakes, but the ability to ground out the last 5.5 minutes, I thought was one thing that really stood out for me.
That game to me epitomized why I think Arkansas is number 3 team in the SEC. I've been saying that all offseason, and I said, I know who this team is. And when things get tough, what do you turn to? You turn to your identity. Cincinnati was pesky. That team wasn't going away. I didn't think a Luke Fickell coached team was going to just fade off into the sunset, despite the fact that they lost 9 dudes to the NFL draft. And obviously it's a much different team than the one that we last saw, which was playing in college football playoff. But what do you turn to in those tough moments? It helps when you have a guy like KJ Jefferson. It really does. And you even see, like, when it's 3rd and 9 and there's 4 minutes left in that game, and it looks like Cincinnati has it covered. But Arkansas is KJ Jefferson, and he can scramble and make plays with his legs and keep the drive alive and take time off the clock. And having a guy in that spot who now is in year 3 in this offense and is looking more and more comfortable with it, I thought there were a lot of great developments. Was it a perfect game? No, it wasn't. And the Jalen Catalon injury worries me. And I'm all of a sudden I'm getting these Bob Sanders comps in my head, and I hate that because Bob Sanders, for those who don't know, the former Iowa product who was a stud when he was on the field with the Colts, just couldn't seem to stay healthy. And it was so frustrating to watch because you knew that when he was on the field, he was such a difference maker. And that's how I'm starting to feel about Jalen Catalon and the way that he plays the sport, which is so fun to watch. But it would be a tough loss if he were out. But a good win for Arkansas. Those are the types of games you got to win to be able to get to that 9-10 win mark. And that's what we're talking about. And I think that's what's realistic for this team.
What do you think about South Carolina? I mean, any win, I guess, would be a good win, but special teams is the reason that they beat Georgia State. And, I would expect you don't see those kind of breakdowns too often in the SEC. And then again, here we are talking about LSU special teams breakdowns and everything like that. But, offensively, they were a little iffy at times. But, I mean, they got a win over Georgia State. What do you think about Arkansas versus South Carolina?
That game was a grind. It was 14-12 midway through the third quarter. South Carolina was losing that football game. I pointed to the Sean Elliott angle and how, he is Group of Five, Pat Narduzzi. He loves to slay the SEC teams. He, of course, led Georgia State into Tennessee to start off the 2019 season. He almost beat Auburn last year on the Plains. He was there on the sideline for App State back in 2007 when they stunned Michigan. I mean, he has a nose for upsets. So I'm starting to think it's going to happen again. And then they had a huge drive to take the lead there. They had a 2-point conversion that they converted where Spencer Rattler ran the football in. But South Carolina has issues, and it might play well into Arkansas's hand if they are dealing with the Catalan injury. South Carolina can't protect Spencer Rattler. They can't. It was bad. They returned all those starters on the offensive line, and that was a bad offensive line last year. So it's like, good news, you return all those starters. Bad news, they weren't very good last year, and they weren't very good on Saturday against a Group of Five defensive line. So you would think that favors Arkansas. Spencer Rattler can absolutely stretch the field if he gets time. But the problem is that he's not getting any time. Mm-hmm. And it's really difficult to be put in those spots repeatedly, especially if you don't necessarily have the pinpoint accuracy that he does. And I think you could see him make some mistakes against this Arkansas defense. But that, to me, was the most telling thing, the most telling takeaway for South Carolina after they kind of had to grind out that win and get some atypical points via the special teams department.
Mm-hmm. Connor, I want to ask you about the game that you were at on Saturday in Atlanta. The Georgia-Oregon game, poor Bo Nix. I thought he was going to try to come in and be the hero, show that he still's got something in the tank, and 3 points is all Oregon could put up. Tell me why Georgia not only is still just as good as last year, but could they be better than last year? Could this team be better than 2021?
I'll say this. I don't think defensively they can be better. I just don't. I think that's the gold standard, and I think they will regress. I do. I want to judge this defense on games that aren't against Bo Nix because in addition to having 180 minutes of footage on the How to Stop Bo Nix game plan that Kirby Smart has, let's also remember that even Will Muschamp had 60 minutes in the How to Stop Bo Nix department. Mm-hmm. So let's not forget about that and the fact that he gave him his only good moment of 2020. But I think that this Georgia team, what's so special to watch is that their transition into a passing offense is evident. Dustin Bennett had a career high in passing yards against an Oregon defense that had a lot of experience coming back. Noah Sewell might be the best returning linebacker in all of college football, depending on what position you actually think Will Anderson plays. So I looked at that and thought, okay, Dan Lanning's going to be able to kind of keep them at bay in the first half. Dustin Bennett played a darn near perfect game. He had 6 incompletions. He had every single drive end in a touchdown. I mean, you can't play much better than that. And you see the schemes and the way that Todd Monken is getting these guys open, and they're working with some wide open spaces. But even in the moments when Stetson looks like he's getting pressured, he gets spun around, and it looks like 4 different Oregon defenders should have him taken down. And instead, he's calm, he's poised, he turns, he finds Vlad McConkey in the end zone. I mean, that's how good this Georgia team can be. I think they're one of 3 teams that can win a national championship, and we saw that play out on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. And with Oregon losing and not looking like an actual contender this year, and with Utah losing, with the poor showing out of fans from UCLA, it was like 100 people total in the Rose Bowl across town. I guess the biggest thing out of the Pac-12 was that USC and Lincoln Riley was able to beat Rice. Is the Pac-12 already done for the CFP this year? I mean, was that loss at the Swamp kind of the last nail in the coffin for the Pac-12?
Sadly, yeah. I mean, it legitimately was. And I'm not one of those people that likes to overreact to week 1. I really try and stay away from that. That was catastrophic. There's no other way to spin it. I had Utah in the college football playoff. I thought they would beat Florida by a touchdown week 1. It wasn't just that. I mean, yeah, you lose that game and Oregon loses to a Georgia team that clearly it's not on the same level with, but 2019 Ohio State is the only team that has had a 9-game Power 5 conference schedule that has run the table in that and in non-conference play and won a conference championship. So that's why this path is so difficult for the Pac-12, because your two highest-rated teams, they lost in week 1. So now you're dependent on a USC team that, quite frankly, hasn't necessarily shown that it's going to be able to stop anybody on defense. Caleb Williams, I still think that the hype is ridiculous, and people need to look at his numbers against top 70 defenses last year. And you have so many questions about this league. I do think the Pac-12 is done. I do think that they absolutely shot themselves in the foot. I was talking to somebody who covers Oregon. He's like, I mean, the Pac-12 was done before Labor Day again. That is indescribable to think about that possibility in the SEC or the Big Ten. And instead, like, that is reality for the Pac-12. I don't think that's an overreaction at all.
So I guess reality is that you're not supposed to wear white pants after Labor Day, and you're never supposed to mention a Pac-12 team in the college football playoff after Labor Day. These two things work in tandem. There are 4 SEC teams that are on the road playing at other Power 5 schools this weekend. Mississippi State visiting Arizona. You got Tennessee at Pitt. Tennessee's a 7-point favorite in that game. They played a really interesting game last year. Mizzou at Kansas State, and then there's Alabama at Texas. Now, Texas, you know, they have their hands full anyway, but Nick Saban, he's in mid-season form, and boy, when I hear him talk about anything to reporters getting upset, I think, well, the next opponent is really going to have their hands full. Here was Nick Saban after they rolled up Utah State.
Now, if Emil didn't miss 5 days of practice, I'm not sure who would have started at left guard, because there's competition at every position, which is a good thing. My biggest issue, and this may be the last time you ever get one, my biggest issue on our whole team was the day the depth chart came out. So you may have seen the last one. Y'all may have seen the last one. Because that's all you worry about. We have competition on our team. We have good players. There's not just, I have, in my mind, 7 or 8 guys that can play winning football on the offensive line. I'm going to play them all.
Oh, I love the Nick Saban, very uncomfortable pauses when he just stares at the reporter and looks at him, and you're waiting for him to hear something. So I don't feel bad for Texas. I just have an expectation of what's about to happen to him, and it ain't going to be pretty.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some context that's needed here, because I think that we're going to really want to compare Bryce Young to Quinn Ewers, right? Like, Quinn Ewers is a very hateable guy for the average college football fan, because he was the highest rated quarterback recruit ever, tied with Vince Young, and he's got a mullet with some really bad facial hair. And the general public is going to want to hate him, kid. They just are. And they're going to want to compare him to Bryce Young and say, see, he's Tate Martell 2.0, which to me is a bit ridiculous. And if you remember, all right, this is somebody who's starting against Power 5 competition for the very first time. He's looking across the way, and he sees Will Anderson on one side. He sees Dallas Turner on the other. It's Alabama. It's the team that's played in 6 of the last 7 national championships, and he's supposed to go blow for blow with the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Good luck. Go get him, kid. I think he's in for a really difficult day from one standpoint, but I do think he's going to make some big-time throws and show that talent off. Now, in terms of whether or not Steve Sarkisian can actually compete with Alabama, that's a different story. I don't think that defense is going to stop a soul. I really don't. I think it's going to be really ugly from that standpoint, especially after you see the level that Nick Saban is on in that one. Could be a lot of cramping, though. Who knows? That game's kicking off at noon Eastern. What is it, 11 local time there? It's going to be a scorcher in Austin. Should be a fun game to watch. Maybe some shades of 2020 Alabama Ole Miss, but I do think Alabama will remind us who the number 1 team in the country is and who the team was that got laughed. We got laughed at for getting a number 1 vote in the coaches poll.
Well, sticking with the Texas-Alabama game, Connor, Steve Sarkisian said today that the Alabama game plan was done 3 months ago. Is that confidence or stupidity?
I mean, it's smart. Let's be honest here. With all due respect to Louisiana Monroe, the last time they were in the same sentence as Alabama for a relevant reason was 2007 when they beat Alabama. So I don't really think that's a slap in the face to them that they got maybe overlooked a little bit in the regular season opener. They probably kept their packages pretty vanilla for that game, and they have a whole new bag of tricks that they're going to unload against Alabama, because why wouldn't you? And why wouldn't you spend the entire offseason trying to focus on this Alabama team? I mean, Texas hasn't beat an AP top 4 team since, 2009 or something? I mean, it's been forever. So, yeah, why wouldn't you want to put all your eggs into that basket? You know you're going to have the national audience on that. And as Oregon reminded us, it's pretty easy to look really bad against an elite SEC foe, no matter how much time you have to prepare. So over-prepare, have everything installed. You know what Bryce Young is. If he's going to run the football like he did against Utah State, good luck. That Texas defense is not going to be able to stay with him because he did not do that at all last year, and he did it in the season opener. So, yeah, Texas is going to have its handful no matter what time they had that game plan set and ready to go.
Online is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports, contests, and events with first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports information, from live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to join today and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BELIEVE, BLEAV 50. That's BELIEVE, BLEAV 50. Bet online, where the game starts.